Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Well, we're outside on a windy day, and you know what gives nice protection from the wind? A great shelter belt. So today we're going to talk a little bit about shelter belt management and just what we're doing in our own operation this spring.
It's always interesting in our part of the country when a shelter belt goes out, because all the neighbors are asking the question, well, are you putting some more trees in, or are you just getting rid of some that weren't in good shape? You know, for us, we actually did take a shelter belt out here a year ago, and we were putting up a new building, and we're going to put a shelter belt on the other side of the building. And as we're putting in a new shelter belt, it's great because now we get to think about all those things, including fertility. How do we want to set things up as far as which tree should go where, what different kinds of trees? So lots of decisions to put together a new shelter belt.
All right, so I've got all these papers in front of me because
you wanted them to blow around in the wind and make noise today.
Exactly. With the shelter belt, though, it'll be much better. But anyway, I guess just to go through some details with you so you kind of know what we're doing in our own operation. Not that you have to do this exact same plan on your farm. We farm in South Dakota.
It's going to vary depending on where you're at. Yeah,
the
trees are totally different if you're in a different climate. And as you come further north, there's a few things that we're thinking about. For one, we have a relatively short growing season, and we want the shelter belt to get up so it can provide some protection quickly. So in a lot of cases, what farmers will do in our area is put some sort of fast-growing bush in that shelter belt. That way we get some shelter for the trees that take a little longer to grow.
Yeah, but almost any shelter belt, that's kind of what you do, is you have something that grows fast, something growing a little slower. Let me just run through our plan. On the outside rows, we're going to have alternating lilacs, common lilac and late lilac, planted 8 feet apart. Then the next row will be amber maple, 8 feet apart, then hackberries, 30 feet apart, native plums, 12 feet apart, and Colorado spruce, finally on the inside, 30 feet apart. Now, one of the big things that when we were talking to our dad, he said a lot of these people set their tree belts up too close together. The trees are too close, within the row, and then the rows are too close together. So a lot of people would have things much closer together with the trees. We're not doing that. We're also having the rows further apart. A lot of times you talk 12 or 15 feet in between. We're going to have 20 foot on center in terms of our row spacing.
I hate to tie up too much land, but by the same token, you have to think about those trees 20 years, 30 years down the road. How big will those trees actually get? And you want to leave space for those trees to give their full growth expression as they mature. Once you get trees that start bumping into each other, touching each other, that's not good for the health of your growth.
Okay, so we're putting in about 1,000 feet of shelter belt, roughly about 400 trees. We're also going to put fabric right in the tree line, and then we're going to put these tubes around the hackberries and the plum trees. And the reason why is just to protect from things like rabbits, deer. We want to do everything we can so these trees actually live long term, and we have great shelter belts, like Darren said, 20 or 30 years down the road. Now, both Darren and me, when we were growing up on the farm, we had to maintain shelter belts or help maintain shelter belts. This is a big deal for us because now when we're older, we see these shelter belts and we say, yeah, we worked on those when we were kids and now they're fantastic and everything's great. But it takes a lot of management all the way along. And one of the big things for us was watering those trees, especially in dry years like 2012. A lot of people's trees died over the next couple of years because during the summer of 2012, they were so dry. You got to keep watering those trees, especially when they're small.
The other thing is fertility. And this is one of the things we didn't really understand when we were young kids out trying to just basically keep the weeds out of the trees. Now, as adults, we're looking at, all right, well, how should we set the soil up for optimum tree growth and tree health? When we think about nutrients like potassium, for example, we talk a lot about shooting for a minimum of a base saturation of 4% K when we're trying to raise corn and soybeans and wheat on our farm. However, for trees and things like vineyards, when you've got woody type plants, if you think about it, potassium is so critical for the stalks on our corn, it's very critical for the trunk on a tree. So we want to see that base saturation potassium up towards 7.5%, so considerably higher to get optimum tree growth.
So anyway, we suggest soil testing where you're going to put these trees in and do a really, really good job with fertility. In terms of weed control, you got to control the weeds too. We start out with Princip, Casseron. You could even use Prowl in trees where it's labeled. So there are a lot of different tree products. Just do a good job controlling the weeds. Start with good fertility, water the trees, and give them plenty of space if you're putting in a new shelter belt.
Well, shelter belts are sure nice, but our weed of the week is not. We'll show you how to stop this weed coming up later in the show.